House Joint Resolution Constitution Amendment number 28 is on the order of third reading and has been read in full for a third time today.
Speaker Welch on third reading.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, I rise today to present House Joint Resolution Constitutional Amendment 28. House Joint Resolution Constitutional Amendment 28 proposes to make a change to our state constitution that we are quite familiar with, but one we cannot overlook because it is language that has proven truly to be transformative. The Federal Voting Rights Act of 1965 and its 1982 amendment took historic steps to secure ballot access, enfranchise historically marginalized groups, and combat discriminatory practices most commonly exercised by Southern states. Consider this. Before the Voting Rights Act, Black representation in Congress consisted of 5 members. 5. And towns across the country were racially gerrymandered in such a way that there was no minority representation on school boards, city councils, and in state legislatures. The Voting Rights Act of 1965, the 1982 amendment, and case law interpreting its provisions for over half a century increased that number 12-fold, and today's 118th Congress is the most racially diverse in our country's history. But we saw in 2012 the first attack by an extraordinarily partisan U.S. Supreme Court when it gutted the pre-clearance requirements. Now we find ourselves in a familiar situation. Our current and even more radical U.S. Supreme Court is considering gutting Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act completely. It is undeniable that the U.S. Supreme Court is poised to dismantle these protections. And when it does, some states will quickly undertake new gerrymandering schemes aimed at stripping away Black and Latino and other minority representation. Here in Illinois, we refuse to go back. We won't go back. Put simply, House Joint Resolution Constitutional Amendment 28 ensures that no citizen on account of race is denied the opportunity to elect representatives of their choosing. And it takes steps to ensure Illinois voices are not silenced, no matter what Washington says. I ask for an aye vote of this initiative, Mr. Speaker, and welcome any questions.
Leader Guzowski is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the constitutional amendment.
To the amendment.
Before I get started, I'd like to request a verification of the vote.
Your request is noted.
Thank you. A little over a year ago, we had filed a lawsuit arguing that the maps as they currently exist violated the Illinois Constitution. We showed repeatedly through an expert who had done work on both sides on a national level that our maps had districts that were not meeting the compactness standard from the Illinois Supreme Court ruling in 1984. In fact, at least 52 of those districts did not meet those standards. About this time last year, we received a ruling from the Supreme Court, not on the merits of the case. The merits were never ruled on. The issue was never addressed. But on whether or not we were timely, even though we had waited for 2 elections to occur, as has been recommended by the U.S. Supreme Court when addressing map issues. Despite that fact, I think it became clear to everybody that the maps as drawn would no longer withstand constitutional muster even under the Illinois Constitution alone. And now we're having an amendment be put forth asking us to put on the ballot a prioritization that now moves that one requirement. There's 3 requirements currently in our Constitution: that our maps be, that our districts be compact, contiguous, and of equal population. We're now going to move that compactness standard, the one that showed that our communities were being divided. The communities in which we live were no longer taken as a whole and at the basis of what our maps would be for representation, but that they were divided, and now we're going to put this in place to allow that to continue. And that's just wrong. It's wrong because the people of the state of Illinois have a right to have their voices heard. And when we do this, we strip them of their right, because we as legislators then choose our voters instead of them choosing us. Mr. Speaker, we had a discussion yesterday in committee at which time you said you trust the voters of Illinois, and I believe you do. And I know I trust the voters of Illinois, and I'm sure everyone in this chamber does. So if we trust the voters of Illinois, I say that we leave the Constitution alone as it's written, as it's been since it was put forth in about 1970, and let the voters pick their elected representatives. It's clear that they will pick a diverse group here in the state of Illinois. You can look at this chamber, and it's a perfect example. There is no need to change this Constitution other than to promote further gerrymandering of the maps to where it's the elected officials picking who their voters are and not the voters selecting their elected officials. That's not right. In fact, let's trust the voters enough. Let's do a different constitutional amendment. Let's let an independent commission decide what our map should look like. I urge a no vote.
Representative Ma is recognized.
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker. To the constitutional amendment, House Joint Resolution Constitutional Amendment 28 is a simple measure, but it's one that our state needs now more than ever before. For too much of our nation's history, minority communities either couldn't access their right to vote or be represented at all, or were fragmented into political irrelevance. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 was an enormous step towards undoing this historic injustice. And our state's update with the Illinois Voting Rights Act in 2011 went even further with the nuanced acknowledgement of influence districts and coalition districts. Not only has the Voting Rights Act helped to enfranchise millions of Americans, but it also holds states accountable when they threaten to, or actually do, carve up communities of color. It's not alarmist to say, plainly, that the Supreme Court is poised to rip up this critical protection. The district I represent, the 24th House District, is richly diverse, representing people from all backgrounds who call our state home. White, Black, Latino, and Asian American families, new citizens, as well as those who have been here for generations. They call Illinois and the 24th District home. And I am here in this chamber, the first Asian American representative in Illinois history, elected in 2016, almost 200 years into our state's history, because of the Voting Rights Act and because of our state's own work to guarantee that minority voices are not only heard, but have meaningful representation in their government. Prior to our redistricting efforts in 2011, the greater Chinatown community in my district was fragmented into 4 state house districts, 3 state senate districts, 3 congressional districts, and 5 city wards. Until then, an entire community's power was nearly non-existent and its voice unheard. House Joint Resolution Constitutional Amendment 28 would prevent this from ever happening again. As the Supreme Court threatens to potentially overturn one of the most important safeguards against race-based discrimination in our democracy, will you have done everything you can to prevent it? Will my colleagues on both sides of the aisle be able to say that here in Illinois, we are not going to throw our democracy into the wood chipper? I'm proud to call Illinois and the 24th District home. Let's pass this measure and ensure that Illinois continues to be a diverse and representative democracy. Thank you.
Representative Weaver is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the other speaker yield?
In the case you will.
Thank you. One question for clarification on this. I'm hoping you can help me understand. As I look at the 5 stated priorities, it goes equal population, equal opportunity, racial coalition districts where practical, then contiguous, then compact. The thing about contiguous is that it either is or it isn't. It's binary. So given that number 3 is where practical, does that imply that number 4, contiguous, is also where practical, or is that a requirement?
I think the language is plain and unambiguous and speaks for itself.
So the way that I read it is that it's where practical. Is that incorrect?
The language is what it is, Rep.
Okay, so it sounds to me like a district may or may not have to be contiguous, which I read as saying there could be part of a district off Lake Michigan, and the other part of it could be in Metropolis. That's my reading. I hope that I'm certainly not an attorney. I hope that that's inaccurate. Mr. Speaker, to the constitutional amendment.
To the amendment.
So I had a little bit of time to do some data digging before this, and I found that there are 18 districts in the House of Representatives where the representative does not match the largest demographic group in their district. That, to me, would appear to go against priorities 2 and 3. One of those representatives is on the Republican side of the aisle. I had a chance to ask him if he feels like he can accurately represent the people of his district despite matching the largest demographic voting group. If you're one of the other 17, that means you're on the other side of the aisle. If you're not sure who you are, I'm happy to show you the data and clarify that for you, but probably you know who you are. And if you're one of those 17, I would ask you, do you feel like you can appropriately represent the people that you represent, even though you do not match the demographics of the largest voting group in your district? I know many of you, I think many of you do represent them accurately. I would hope that you see the flaws in priorities number 2 and 3 on this list. Ladies and gentlemen, voters choose their representatives. Under this legislation, I believe that we have representatives handpicking who their voters are. We hear a lot in politics in this body about threats to democracy. I can't think of a larger threat to democracy than politicians picking the people who they choose to represent. Thank you.
Leader Guzzardi is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the resolution.
Resolution.
Just want to correct a couple of statements that have been made so far and then make a brief point about the resolution itself. First of all, to the immediately prior speaker, the language around contiguousness is not where practicable. Contiguousness is a requirement in the proposed constitutional amendment. And then similarly to the previous speaker's point about compactness, the gentleman's point is just incorrect. The Constitution will still require legislative districts to be compact. The only change here is that that requirement is not as important as the requirement to preserve minority representation. It is still a requirement in the Constitution. It's just a requirement that falls below other requirements in the order of priority. And the gentleman said that we should look around at the chamber and recognize how diverse this body is, and that should be an indication that we should trust the voters. And I would only say that our chamber looks like this because of this law, because of the Illinois Voting Rights Act, because of the Federal Voting Rights Act. Our chamber looks like this because we drew maps to make it look like this. The reason our districts look like they do is to make sure that people of color have a say in who they elect, and that our body is diverse and represents the people of this state. And I'm damn proud of those maps. I think everyone in this room should be proud of those maps and should be proud of the diversity of this body. By voting against this amendment, you are telling Theresa Ma that she doesn't belong here. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't mean to offend. I don't mean to offend. What I mean to say is that by voting against this amendment, we are denying communities of color the opportunity to elect representatives of their choosing. That shouldn't be an offensive proposition. The plain language of the amendment says that we must consider the interests of communities of color in drawing legislative maps. That's not in our Constitution today. The federal law that protects that right is about to be taken away from us. We must ensure that Illinois voters have the right to elect representatives who serve their community's interests. And you heard the leader say that her community was divided among multiple legislative districts, didn't have the opportunity to build the political power to elect a representative of its choosing. Absent a law like this, they wouldn't be able to. Our maps are drawn the way they're drawn for a reason, and it's to ensure that the chamber looks the way it looks. I'm proud of those maps. I'm proud to serve with every member of this colleague who's elected because districts were drawn to elect a diverse set of people to this chamber. And I think this amendment is a vital step toward ensuring that that proceeds, and I urge an aye vote.
Representative Niemerg is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the constitutional amendment.
To the amendment.
Well, I'd like to cut through the virtue signaling that we've heard in this chamber and get to the politics of this. The truth is this amendment is reflective of what's going on through the entire country, and it is nothing more than additional power being wielded by the majority party. Folks in Illinois need to understand what the redistricting process is and what it means. It means that the majority party gets to draw the maps as they see fit. Now, I was around for the last redistricting cycle, and I was here for all of it, the entire mess. And what I learned is that the majority party basically wants to draw these maps around Republicans' home addresses. What that means is there's many folks that were here, many folks that are here now, who don't represent their hometowns, don't represent their family, don't represent their friends that they've known their entire lives. That's disenfranchisement. I have family that can't vote for me because they live a mile away, yet I have the largest district in the state. A friend of mine moved 100 miles away after college, good friend of mine. The joke is now he's in my district after redistricting, but his mom and dad, brother and sister, who live a mile away, are not in my district anymore. So when it really comes down to it, we have a 78-40 House here. 5 seats were lost during the last redistricting. The governor said he would not sign a map that wasn't fair. When we talked about independent commissions, he signed 3 maps. Multiple maps were dropped on multiple days with our districts changing, again, around our home addresses and our hometowns. And not only that, the majority party decided, you know what, it's been 60 years. The Supreme Court, this just isn't fair anymore. We have to remap the Supreme Court of the state of Illinois for better representation. Hasn't been done in 60 years. I challenge everybody in this state to go look at the maps. Go look at how they're drawn. Go look at how they're drawn around Republicans' home addresses, hometowns, friends and family. Look at how partisan these maps are today and ask yourselves, is this fair? Is this something that we should be doing in Illinois? who are we disenfranchising? Because all the virtue signaling, everything we're talking about in this chamber comes down to one thing and one thing only: power and control. Please vote no. Thank you.
Leader Gordon Booth is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the constitutional amendment.
The amendment.
I rise in strong support to this constitutional amendment. You see, I'm the daughter of two individuals that were born in 1940 and 1941, respectively. They were born in Louisiana, and my father was born in Money, Mississippi. You may remember just a few short weeks ago, we talked about Money, Mississippi, because Money, Mississippi is where Emmett Till was murdered. My parents came to Illinois looking for opportunity, like a lot of people during the Great Migration. And my mother was a significant part of the civil rights movement right here in Illinois. And so as we talk about these things in the abstract, when we see the pictures and we talk about the history that was fought and made in order to create what you see today, it is nothing abstract about it. Those black and white photos were filled with color because those stories were passed down in my family. You see, what's happening at the federal level is not abstract. If the Supreme Court is poised to gut the Voting Rights Act, we have to understand what we're dealing with. It literally is the last meaningful protection that we have against racial discrimination in voting. The gains that we have made are because of the Voting Rights Act. When that protection falls, we have to ask the question, what are states going to be prepared to do? Illinois has an answer. We protect the right to vote in Illinois. We don't dilute it, and we don't suppress it. We also don't wait for Washington to tell us what's right. This resolution today puts Illinois on the record. It clearly states at this critical moment in time that the right to vote here in Illinois is sacred. I urge and I vote.
Representative Spain is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to go directly to the constitutional amendment.
To the amendment.
Ladies and gentlemen, and the voters of Illinois, you deserve to hear honest communication about the constitutional amendment that will be placed before you this November. This constitutional amendment does not empower you. It will disenfranchise you. The sponsor of this initiative points to the importance of diversity here in this chamber, a point to which I strongly agree, and am proud of the diversity in this chamber. But we cannot use diversity as a sword and a shield only when necessary to protect political power. That's what this constitutional amendment does. You see, diversity is important. It truly is. Racial diversity, ethnic diversity, gender diversity, but also political diversity. And that is not represented in this body and in this state. We stand here on the Illinois House of Representatives floor, and this is a body where the political composition in this room in no way reflects the reality of the state of Illinois. This is what gerrymandering is, and it is wrong. The sponsor of this initiative knows that. This initiative continues to double down on pure partisanship for the preservation of power. Think about it. We have a rule in this chamber deliberately designed to limit bipartisan cooperation, a rule instituted by the sponsor of this measure. This is not democracy in action. This is the embodiment of the corruption of absolute power. It is wrong. In Illinois, if you like the way things are going, if you like paying the highest property taxes in the country, rising cost of living, out of control debt, a state that continues to be plagued again and again by ethics and corruption scandal, then you'll love this Constitution Amendment. But if you don't, if you're tired of seeing your family fleeing the state of Illinois, your children and grandchildren exiting for better opportunities in other places, you need to vote no on this amendment. This amendment takes the status quo in Illinois, which preserves the most extreme and elaborate gerrymandering in the United States of America, and it makes it worse. This amendment makes certain that the same politicians who have delivered this state to this place will have unlimited power to continue unchecked for decades to come. The voters of Illinois need to send a message. Send a message that enough is enough. We are tired of the unfair and extreme gerrymandering that delivers artificial outcomes to chambers like this and continues to damage the state of Illinois. On this question, make a statement. We need fair maps, independent redistricting. Vote no on further gerrymandering in the state of Illinois.
The chair recognizes Speaker Welsh to close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I look around this room today, I see what this amendment is about. It's about Black. It's about Latino. It's about Irish, Italian, Asian, Korean, Vietnamese, Muslim, progressive, moderate, conservative, men, women. I see a body that looks like Illinois. And every day, we're working to deliver for Illinois. And it's because of that diversity. It's because of those maps that courts have said are constitutional, that were drawn with the Federal Voting Rights Act as a guide. When I look at that portrait of Abraham Lincoln watching over us from the Republican side of the aisle, I recall his words that a nation of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from this earth. Those words and that vision guided our country through our darkest hours. Let's show everyone today that in the land of Lincoln, we still believe that a democracy of the people, by the people, and for the people must include all of the people. Mr. Speaker, I ask for an aye vote for the people.
Members, Representative Ugasti has requested a verification. All members will be in their chairs and vote their own switches. The question is, shall House Joint Resolution Constitutional Amendment 28 pass? All in favor vote aye, all opposed vote nay. The voting is open. Have all voted who wish? Have all voted who wish? Have all voted who wish? Mr. Clerk, please take the record. On this question, there are 74 voting yes, 38 voting no, and 0 voting present. Mr. Clerk, please read the names of those voting in the affirmative.
A poll of those voting in the affirmative. Representative Ammons, Representative Andrade, Representative Avalar, Representative Benton, Representative Blair Sherlock, Representative Briel, Representative Buckner, Representative Canty, Representative Cassidy, Representative Chung, Representative Cochran.
Representative Ugasti is recognized.
Call the verification.
On this question, there are 74 voting in favor, 38 voting no, and 0 voting present. And this House Joint Resolution Constitutional Amendment, having received a constitutional majority, is hereby declared passed.